A very good evening to you all. Namaskar. Upasthit সকলোকে আদৰণি জনাইছো আজিৰ অনুষ্ঠানলে. I, Kasturi Goswami, Forest Ranger, Assam Forest Department, welcome you all to the webinar series of Conserving Lesser Known Species. As a part of 68th Wildlife Week 2022, Forest Department of Assam has collaborated with WWF India to celebrate 8 of the lesser known species of Assam in an effort to promote the preservation and conservation of the species contributing to our national pride. 68তম বন্যপ্ৰাণী সপ্তাহৰ লগত সংগতি ৰাখি অসম বন বিভাগ আৰু WWF ইণ্ডিয়াৰ যুটীয়া প্ৰচেষ্টাত অসমৰ 8বিধ কম পৰিচিত প্ৰজাতি অৰ্থাৎ লেচাৰ নোন স্পেচিছৰ সংৰক্ষণৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত সজাগতা আনিবলৈ এই বক্তৃতালানিৰ আয়োজন কৰা হৈছে। পৰিৱেশ সুৰক্ষাত বন্যপ্ৰাণীৰ প্ৰয়োজনীয়তাৰ কথা উপলব্ধি কৰি বন্যপ্ৰাণী সুৰক্ষাৰ বাবে এক জনমত গঢ়ি তোলাৰ মানহেৰে অসম বন বিভাগে এই পদক্ষেপ হাতত লৈছে। আজি আমাৰ এই ওয়েবিনাৰ অনুষ্ঠানৰ 6th দিন। আজি আমি আলোচনা কৰিব লোৱা প্ৰজাতিটো হৈছে দেওহা, হোৱাইট উইংড উড ডাক, যাৰ সাইন্টিফিক নেম এছাৰকনিছ কিউটিলেটা। 2003 চনত ইয়াক অসমৰ ৰাজ্যিক পক্ষী ঘোষণা কৰা হৈছে। দেওহা এবিধ আপুৰুগীয়া আৰু বিৰল প্ৰজাতিৰ হাঁহ। ঐতিহাসিকভাৱে দেওহা উত্তৰ পূব ভাৰত বাংলাদেশৰ পৰা জাভা সুমাত্ৰালৈকে বিস্তৃত আছিল। ভাৰতবৰ্ষত বৰ্তমান কেৱল অসম আৰু অৰুণাচলতহে দেওহা পোৱা যায়। উজনি অসমৰ বৰ্ষাৰণ্য আৰু নামেৰি ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় উদ্যানত সৰ্বাধিক সংখ্যক দেওহা পোৱা যায়। উজনি অসমৰ বৰ্ষাৰণ্যৰ ই মূল সূচক প্ৰজাতি, ইণ্ডিকেটৰ স্পেচিছ বুলি আমি কওঁ। ক্ৰমান্বয়ে বৃদ্ধি পাই অহা বনাঞ্চল ধ্বংস আৰু অন্যান্য বিভিন্ন কাৰণত দেওহাঁহৰ সংখ্যা বিপদজনকভাৱে হ্ৰাস পাইছে। IUCN ৰেড লিষ্টত দেওহাঁহক এন্ডেঞ্জাৰ্ড অৰ্থাৎ বিলুপ্তপ্ৰায় প্ৰজাতিৰ গোটত অন্তৰ্ভুক্ত কৰা হৈছে। এই কম পৰিচিত প্ৰজাতিটোৰ বিষয়ে আলোচনা কৰিবলৈ আজি আমি আমাৰ মাজলৈ নিমন্ত্ৰণ কৰি আনিছো দুজন বিশেষ বক্তা, ডক্টৰ আনৱাৰুদ্দিন চৌধুৰী ছাৰ, Honorary Chief Executive, the Rhino Foundation for Northeast India, আৰু Kasturi Sule Madam, IFS ACF ডিগবৈ ডিভিজন। মই আপোনালোক দুয়োকে আদৰণি জনাইছো। প্ৰথমতে আমাৰ মাজত আছে ডক্টৰ আনৱাৰুদ্দিন চৌধুৰী ছাৰ। Dr. Choudhury sir is an Indian naturalist noted for his expertise on the fauna of Northeast India. He is Honorary Chief Executive of Rhino Foundation for Nature in Northeast India. Sir, একেদৰে এগৰাকী প্ৰশাসনিক বিষয়া, বন্যপ্ৰাণী সংৰক্ষক, গৱেষক, পক্ষী বিশেষজ্ঞ আৰু লেখক। তেখেতে 24খন গ্ৰন্থ, 900তকৈও অধিক প্ৰবন্ধ আৰু 50ৰো অধিক গৱেষণা পত্ৰ লিখি উলিয়াইছে। যোৱা 40 বছৰ ধৰি ছাৰে বন্যপ্ৰাণী সংৰক্ষণৰ ওপৰত কাম কৰি আছে। আমাৰ সৌভাগ্য আজি ছাৰ আমাৰ মাজত আছে। মই ছাৰক এতিয়া অনুৰোধ জনাম তেখেতৰ বক্তৃতা ৰাখিবলৈ। ছাৰ, ইউ কেন কণ্টিনিউ ইউৰ সেশন ছাৰ।
Thank you, Kasturi Goswami. সকলোকে মই ধন্যবাদ জনাইছো। First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to be with you and share my experience with the white-winged duck. মই এটা সৰু প্ৰেজেন্টেশ্যন বনাইছো। মই প্ৰেজেন্টেশ্যনৰ জৰিয়তে আপোনালোকক সকলোবোৰ কৈ যাম। প্ৰেজেন্টেশ্যনটো ষ্টাৰ্ট কৰক। আজি মোৰ টপিকটো হ'ল হোৱাইট-উইংড ডাক, এছাৰকনিছ কিউটিলেটা, যিটো আমাৰ কস্তুৰী বাইদেউ ইতিমধ্যে কৈছে। নেক্সট প্লিজ, নেক্সট শ্লাইড। লোকেলি এইটো দেওহাঁহ কোৱা হয়, আপোনালোকে গম পাইছে। ইট ইজ এ ৰেচিডেণ্ট ডাক, অৰ্থাৎ 12 মাহ আমাৰ অঞ্চলতেই থাকে। ইট ইজ লিষ্টেড এজ এন্ডেঞ্জাৰ্ড বাই IUCN and BirdLife International because it has a very small and fragmented population, which is undergoing a very rapid and continuing decline as a result of the loss of and disturbance to riverine habitats. Next, it is a key indicator species for rainforests. Its management requires protection to forest wetlands where it feeds and mature trees where it roosts and breeds. যেমন দেখিছে তাৰ সংৰক্ষণ কাৰণে কিছুমান স্পেচিয়েল এটেনশ্যন দিব লাগিব। অকল আমি জেনেৰেল কনজাৰ্ভেশ্যন কৰি গ'লে নহ'ব। আমি জংগল পুল যিবিলাক ফৰেষ্ট ৱেটলেণ্ড আছে এইবোৰ আমি প্ৰটেকশ্যন দিব লাগিব আৰু মেচিয়ৰ ট্ৰী কেতিয়াবা দেখা যায় মেচিয়ৰ ট্ৰীবোৰ বতাহত পৰে উইণ্ড ফলেন হয় বা আৰু বিভিন্ন কাৰণত ডেষ্ট্ৰয় হয় ক'ৰবাত মানুহে বুঢ়া গছ বুলি কাটি লৈ আনে সেইবোৰ গছ নহ'লে সিহঁতে ৰুষ্টিং কৰিব নোৱাৰে আৰু ব্ৰিডিং কৰিব নোৱাৰে নেক্সট প্লিজ এইটো ষ্টেট বাৰ্ড বুলি ডিক্লেয়াৰ হৈছিল ইন দ্য ইয়াৰ 2003 and I had the opportunity to work in the department as joint secretary and play a role কারণ there are competitors and at the end it was the great pied hornbill which was about to be the state bird then we pleaded that ultimately the white-winged duck got the nod. Next please. Dihin Patkai National Park was established initially as a wildlife sanctuary with white-winged duck in focus. Dibrusoika was also established with focus on the species, although the bird is now occasional. You can see the picture, Dibrusoika in early 90s, when it was a stronghold of the white-winged duck. You can see the tall tree line. The tree line is no longer to be found. And even this wetland has also vanished. So because of all this degradation, the wood duck has almost vanished from Dibrusoika National Park, although it was established with this bird in focus. Next, please. It is a forest dweller and affects water bodies, including small rivers, sluggish channels, pools, etc., inside rainforest. There is evergreen and semi-evergreen forest, mostly in lowlands, but uncommonly to the higher hills also, but below 2000 meters. This is a typical habitat you can see, a jungle pool inside rainforest. This is from Upper Jing West Block, just outside the Patkai Wildlife National Park. Next, please. This is another major haunt of the wood duck. It is the Dumduma River. Again, a sluggish water channel, sluggish river, in fact, which earlier we used to see frequently. Even now, also during my last visit, I could see on the 2 visits I could see a pair each day. Next, please. This is the world distribution of white-winged wood duck, starting from Bhutan, through in Northeast India, Myanmar, in the Chinese countries such as Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, to Malaysia and Indonesia. You can see it was originally described from Java, but it is extinct in Java Island. Similarly, the yellow marked areas are where it has been extirpated. Similar pockets are also there in Northeast India. But if habitat regenerates, there is likelihood of coming back to these areas. But not to those yellow areas in Myanmar, Thailand, as well as Java, because those areas have been completely cleared. Next, please. This is the range of white-winged wood duck in Assam, which is a global stronghold for the species. You can see the westernmost is within Assam is Manas National Park, where in fact it was found very recently in the year 2006. And you can see that most of the green areas, light green is the historic range and deep green is the current range. You can see that Tinsukia district with parts of Dibrugarh is still the stronghold. Not only for Assam, but it is a global stronghold. Next, please. The wood duck lives in pairs, threes, or in small groups. Only twice recorded in loose groups of more than 10. It was 14 ducks were found roosting together in Dangori Arab and 12 in Dumduma Arab. That's why you can see the importance of Dumduma and Dangori for the species. The only 2 cases where, in the world where 10 plus ducks were recorded together, both these areas are in Tinsukia district of Assam, and both are reserve forests. So that's why I always highly recommend Dumduma Dangori as a protected area for the wood duck. In disturbed areas, they remain active in the morning and evening only, including night. But in undisturbed areas, they remain active during daytime also. Of course, undisturbed areas are now very few and far between. They roost in horizontal branches of tall trees, nest in holes and hollows of old, mature trees. Broken top of trunk are preferred. Next, please. Now, what is the population estimate? Everybody knows that its population is very small. And current trend is also it is a sharp decline, except in Nameri National Park. Everywhere it has declined very sharply. Now you can see this birdlife data zone, which is accepted around the world. I have downloaded it only yesterday. That it is updated. You can see the population of India about 450. Reference given of my own book, Birds of Assam of the year 2000. That means the figure of 450 is of 1990s. So I tried to update it, and I will soon publish very soon. And between 2019 and 2022, I visited all those areas. And I must confess that the decline was as high as almost 2/3 in many areas. That means the current population in India won't be more than 200. Next, please. Now, why the decline? So sharp decline. If you compare with 90s, it has come down to almost 1/3. Number one is habitat loss, the loss of forest cover. Old mature trees with hollows for nesting have been lost. Trees for roosting have been also been lost. Then fishing and drying up of forest pools. The small jungle pools are often drained out for fishing. In fact, for catching fish with bare hands. Then, of course, there are encroachments in the habitat, severe in areas such as Sunai Wildlife Sanctuary and also in Dibru-Saifar National Park. Photo on the left is Balipara Reserve Forest, sandwiched between Sunai and Nameri, and the photo is part of Nameri Tiger Reserve buffer zone. Right hand side is Dhemaji, Gali Reserve Forest, which also had white-winged wood duck in the past. Now, with such clearings, you can't think of having not only wood duck, any other species. Next, please. Then, of course, another major threat, because poaching should not have been a major threat, but the question is that the number of duck is so low that even a poaching of a single bird is a matter of serious concern. Poaching is mainly for meat, egg collection, and duckling collection. Of course, it is opportunistic, but egg collection and duckling collection is quite serious. Next, please. During the last 1.5 century, about 3,000 square kilometers of prime white-winged duck habitat were lost to tea plantation, including small birds. And in future, we may have similar threat from palm oil plantation, which of course would require proper regulation. And we must ensure that it is not carried out in the ducks or any other wildlife habitat. May be focused on the degraded areas, not in the rich forest. Next, please. Now, interestingly, you see, district-wise, the stronghold of white-winged duck in Assam is Tinsukia district. It is the same district which is also the stronghold of oil and coal mining in the state. So the clash is apparent. You can see open cast coal mining, the habitat has been destroyed, completely destroyed. Similarly, in oil, the number of oil rigs are there in the habitat. Then, of course, across Northeast, hundreds of dams have been proposed. Some are coming up, which is submerging some of the habitats, may not be all. But at the time of construction of the dams, thousands of laborers work, creating a lot of disturbance. And many of the laborers, during their off time, they resort to snaring of birds, put traps, fruit traps, not necessarily for white-winged duck, but for other species also. Then the pollution of water bodies. Since it is a water-dependent species, pollution matters much. And with coal and oil mining surrounding areas, water bodies are apparently getting polluted. Next, please. Fortunately, a major part of the population occurs inside protected areas. But being a bird, you can't contain them within the boundaries of the park. They will go out and might get killed. Two of the major protected areas for the species are Nameri National Park and Dihing Patkai National Park. Dibru-Soykha was once a major habitat, but now no longer is a major habitat. Sunai Rupai Wildlife Sanctuary, Manas National Park, Kolongabar Gibbon Sanctuary, Nambor Complex of Sanctuary, Bihali RF, now Wildlife Sanctuary. All these have small numbers of ducks and also some sizable area under of good habitat also. Next, please. There are still some unprotected areas with good habitat and also sizable number of ducks. This includes Upper Ding West Block outside the Dihing Patkai National Park. Upper Ding East Block, including the oil field area of Digboy. Dubduma RF and Dangori RF I have already narrated earlier. And Lamding RF is also a sizable area and there must be survivors, although there are no recent reports. And there are several other smaller pockets of reserve forest in Tinsukia district, such as Tokowani, Torani, Guridihing, Kakojan. All these have small numbers of ducks. There are no reports or even extirpated in areas such as Barak Valley districts, Dima Hasa, Karbi Anglong, Dhamaji, Lakhimpur, Charaideo districts. And under encroachment in the reserve forests of Balipara, Nodwar, Vishwanath, Kumsong, and Duarmora. All these had once upon a time the habitat of white-hood duck, but now no longer in existence. Next, please. Now, one way is the community participation. Why community participation is important, I will tell in the next slide. We have good examples of ecotourism by local communities in Manas. And it is in the offing in many other protected areas. And in white-hood duck habitat, we need similar community participation. Next, please. Why community participation is extremely important for a species such as white-hood duck? Because you see, unlike larger species such as rhino elephant, where a poaching is immediately reported, actions are also being taken. Poaching, egg collection, and duckling collection mostly go unnoticed. It's very difficult to detect. Only community participation is there. The community people can detect. Hence, community support from fringe villages is of utmost importance. If necessary, some youth may be trained and motivated as volunteers. You can see the photograph of 2007, some volunteers from the eastern buffer of Manas Tiger Reserve. Not the national park, but eastern buffer, mainly in Subankata Reserve Forest area. It is because of these volunteers that area has been saved. And now thousands of tourists are visiting their area, particularly even picnickers, up to 15 to 20,000. And these people are getting benefit, the fringe villagers, through ecotourism. Next, please. The climate change is, of course, also a matter of concern. Climate change is a natural phenomenon of long-term shifts in climate, temperature, and weather patterns. But due to human activities, it has become much faster, and that's why the concern. It might affect the smaller water bodies scattered over rainforest areas, as has been generally predicted for such habitats. There are many studies, and recently I've gone through some articles. The global warming's impact would be severe on small scattered water bodies in rainforest areas. And you can imagine what would happen to white-hood duck if the small water body inside forest vanishes. Next, please. This is the last slide. I have some suggestions as well as recommendations. We need to protect the remaining habitats of the wood duck, considering its very small population of low hundreds and being a very important indicator species. We need to protect the remaining habitats. Better enforcement and management is required for existing protected areas, especially in Dihing Patkai, Dibru and Sonairipai. We need much better enforcement as well as management. Then inclusion of some areas, mainly the smaller water bodies in Dihing Patkai. You must have seen a lot of photographs are coming up through various tourists and photographers from across the globe, mentioning as Dihing Patkai. But those wetlands are not inside Dihing Patkai, they are outside. And we need to include them within the park. We need to work out some mechanism that how these can be actually included within the park. Then early declaration of Dumduma and Dangori are as a sanctuary. This is very important for the duck. Then check on encroachment, felling and poaching, including egg and duckling collections, maybe through community participation. Eviction of encroachers from Sunairupai Wildlife Sanctuary and buffer zone of Nameri Tiger Reserve is also very important. Strengthening of anti-poaching measures, extremely important. Review and regulate some of the development projects like dams, palm oil plantation, power lines, roads. We need them, but some sort of regulation is required, strict regulation, and one need to review this so that harm could be less. Then in particularly such species, awareness is very important. And community participation, I've already mentioned. But before community participation, people will have to be made aware. And lastly, research and population monitoring. Population monitoring is very important because you might have seen the BirdLife International and IUCN, they are using my data of 90s of about 450 ducks in India. And that has been referred widely, everywhere. But now, after nearly 2.5 decades, you see, it has come down to almost 1/3. So we need to monitor it. There should have been a monitoring, but monitoring in at least 2-3 times in between. I also could not get time because I was in the service. Others also somehow forgot to take it into the priority list. So I have done that recently, and I will just further add on that, and we'll publish it soon. So thank you very much.
ধন্যবাদ স্যার।
Thank you.
আপোনাৰ তথ্য সমৃদ্ধ ভাষণৰ কাৰণে আশা কৰোঁ সকলো উপকৃত হ'ব ছাৰৰ বক্তৃতাৰ পৰা। এইবাৰ আমাৰ মাজত আছে ACF ডিগবৈ ডিভিজন মিছ কস্তুৰী চুলে মেডাম। মেডাম 2019 বেটছৰ ভাৰতীয় বন বিষয়া। She is an avid birder and photographer by passion. তেখেতে নিজৰ বিশেষ অৰ্হতাৰে দিহিং পাটকাই বনাঞ্চলত বন্যপ্ৰাণী সংৰক্ষণৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত উল্লেখযোগ্য বৰঙণি আগবঢ়াইছে। Madam, I request you to start your session, please.
Thank you so much. Without wasting any further time, a very good evening to everyone present here. And I would like to start with my presentation on a very special topic, the white-winged wood duck. Let me just share my screen. I hope it is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible, ma'am.
Okay. So now we'll start. We have got a very good overview of what exactly the white-winged wood duck is, where it stays, how it lives. So I would like to focus more on this very important habitat of its and the place that it loves to call it its home, the Dihing Patkai National Park. So I have named my presentation itself as it is the secret or the gem of Dihing Patkai National Park. So this bird is a very secretive bird. So whatever it does is a very secretive and elusive manner. So I would like to say that it is, let us look into the secret life of the white-winged wood duck. And the first thing, the Assamese name of this duck is called Devha, and it is derived from its very peculiar call. So I assume that our listeners are able to comment or give their interactive responses in the comment box. So I'll just put on 3 calls right now, and they are of 3 different ducks. I would like you to guess which one out of these was the is the white-winged wood duck, and you can just mention it in the comments. We will come back to it at the end of our presentation. So I'll just play 3 calls now. This was the first one. This is the second one, and the last one goes. So, with this, it's a small quiz for all of you, our listeners. I would just love whether the first, second, or the third one belong to the white-winged wood duck. About the food, what it eats, where it likes to stay, I think Sir has covered it in a very good manner. And the last point I would once again like to say, Sir has also focused on it about where are my brothers and sisters. So this can be looked at in 2 ways. The first is that it is an endangered species, less than 200, as Sir is saying, remaining in wild. So yes, it has lost its brothers and sisters to a great extent. But apart from that, also within a particular habitat, the populations have got isolated. So the connections that earlier used to be there between the different groups of the ducks are now quite lost. Uh, Next, now we will go to this part that it's a duck. Then we might think that we know the importance of the tiger, we know everything. And so we say that it is the predator, we want to save it. So what exactly, why do we need to save the duck? So we need to first understand that why this duck helps us, or how this duck is there very important in our life. So the first thing is maintenance of local genetic pool by connecting the wetlands. So these birds stay in very isolated, secluded pools within the forest areas, which are not connected with the surrounding water bodies that directly. So this bird moves between the different wetlands within a particular forest, and it connects the different wetlands, giving a very good genetic diversity. Next is seed disperser. There are so many of the plants of this rainforest which are dependent on species such as the hula gibbon or the duck for the dispersal of their seeds. So from one place to the other, these ducks carry the seeds and help the dispersal. Next is maintenance of water quality. Of course, it feeds in on these algae and different plants, mollusks, and small fishes, crustaceans. So these help in maintaining the water quality of the wetlands. Checking on invasive species. So it acts as a local main predator of that particular pond where it stays in. Next is it is an indicator species, as we have already heard from both the speakers, that this when you can see a white-winged wood duck, first of all, you need to be very lucky to spot one. Secondly, when you get to see one, you should be sure that you are in a very good undisturbed habitat. So that indicator species says that you have maintained your habitat very well. So in the end, we can say that it is a wetland savior, a very peculiar type of wetland it requires, and that wetlands it protects very well. And we all know that wetlands have a very important role in our ecosystems to play. So because of all these reasons, we have to give a very serious thought at saving the duck that we have. Now, what makes the Devha very special and different from the other ducks? First is it is very shy. One story I can just tell you in short, that when I came here for the first time, and my father also accompanied with me to see this duck. So when we both of us went, and we were hiding under one of the bushes and trying to look at the bird, and just then something happened, and a small twig of a plant broke, and with that small took, the bird flew off. It is that sensitive and that shy. So this bird is very elusive. Hence, that is one reason that it is a dream for all birders that if you get to see this bird, you are a very lucky person. Apart from that, it makes the conservation, like from the manager point of view, I can tell you that conservation of this bird is very difficult because of its elusive and shy nature. Then it prefers secluded canopy covered swamps. So if you see, compare both the pictures, the lower picture is of the other ducks which are relatively in the open, while the above ducks are moreover in a closed canopy and a very dark area. Not found in large flocks, whereas the other birds, if you go for birding in the major water bodies, so we see a huge population of birds together, but these flocks are very small. And very special, why it is called the wood duck, because it perches and roosts breeding in large bark trees. So the dead and decaying trees in our forests are also very important. Sometimes we think that when a tree is dead or decaying or it is hollow, it is deceased, it should be removed from the forest, but no, it is very important for such birds, including the owls and the other creatures. Now we come to our main part, the Dihing Patkai National Park. What is so special about its home? Let me just tell you where it is. We are in Assam, and this national park is in the northeasternmost part of Assam. So I've just put it on the Google, and this is the map of the national park. It is approximately 221 square kilometers spread, and if you see, this is a Google satellite map. So you can see that it is completely green. So it is one of the richest habitats possible in Assam today. So protecting this habitat is of utmost importance. It is fondly referred to as the Amazon of the East for its beautiful rainforest structure. These forests are also known as the Hulong, Mekai, and the Nahar forest for the dipterocarps that they dwell. And these dipterocarps are the kind of heroes or the flagship species of this forest. It is a treasure trove of various different biodiversity. We have the clouded leopard. So right from the smallest, tiniest butterfly to microorganisms to the huge elephant, there is a huge diversity of flora and fauna in this area. But what makes it so special for the bird is this. It's a multi-storied rainforest. So if you can see, the higher canopy levels are covered by the long trees, the white barked ones that you can see. Then there is the middle canopy, the lower canopy. So it's a very dense and a relatively undisturbed kind of forest. As against open or deciduous forest, we see a lot of disturbance in the lower canopy or the ground levels. Whereas this is a multi-storied forest which has a lot of undisturbed lands. Second is perennial water availability. It has a huge large amount of rainfall throughout the year. Then as it is a rainforest, there are a lot of streams and rivers flowing through it. Also, there are such inland swamps, or you can say freshwater wetlands, which you see in the picture above. The picture below shows the Dihing River that flows right through the center of the Dihing Patkai National Park. So ample water availability makes it a very good habitat for the white-winged wood duck. And lastly, it is a large area of contiguous forest. This makes it a very undisturbed kind of a patch. So human interference, anthropological interference is pretty low, which is why there are many such secluded pools available for the white-winged wood duck to fly within the forest areas also. Now we will come to the main thing. Sir has given a lot of information about the threats that the bird has and the declining population and the need for conservation efforts. Now I would like to focus on the few things that we are doing from our side as managers of the park. The first thing I would like to say is the Dihing Patkai Wildlife Sanctuary was upgraded into the national park in June 2021, giving it a higher level of protection. And the new logo of the national park, if you see, the P dwells the white-winged wood duck. So it shows that how important the species is in the making of this new national park. Next is ducks or any kind of bird or any fauna for that matter, they do not know the legal boundaries of forest, that this is my national park, this is not the boundary of the national park. So we cannot tell them that you don't go here, you don't go there. So the landscape approach is very important in this scenario. Hence, for that, it is also required to secure or have a good protection to all the forests that are surrounding these protected areas. So, from this angle, also, we have converted 6,800 hectare of proposed reserve forest to reserve forest, giving it a better legal protection. And as sir has mentioned, that a lot of pools or the wetlands exist outside the protected area. So these are covered in these different reserve forests. Next is wetland protection and management. Now this is very important and a very distinct thing for this bird, because it is, as I told you, it is very shy, it is very elusive, and any kind of anthropological interference such as fishing or people venturing into the pools will definitely disturb the habitat and the ecology of the bird. Hence, protection of the wetland is one of our main things that we do. Management involves ensuring that there is no pollution, there is no disturbance, there is no dumping of waste or any kind of such things in the areas. So maintaining its pristine existing habitat. For that, we have very extensive kind of patrolling. So our staff goes for night, day patrolling throughout all the seasons. And this is very important to protect the forest, especially the flora and fauna and the wildlife from poaching, hunting, and any sort of illegal activities. This is another thing that we have initiated, that demarcation and digitization of forest boundaries. This is very important to stop or to curtail encroachment increase inside the forest areas, because once encroachment comes and the habitat goes, no matter whatever you do in the future to restore it, is very difficult to get back the original habitat. So one very particular phenomenon of the white-winged wood duck is it resides in primary tropical evergreen forest, and this primary forest, once lost, it is very difficult to bring them back. We are also trying to restore the degraded habitats of the outer reserve forests, which are outside the Dihing-Patkai National Park. So a very massive plantation drive is being taken up in Upper Dihing Reserve Forest, East Block, West Block, and the other reserve forests, so that we can restore or build back not the same but a very similar kind of forest that exists. And this we do by planting mostly the native species that are there. For this, we also have our nursery, which where we bring up quality planting material with of rainforest species, with the Holong being the hero of the nursery. Next is community participation. As sir mentioned, of course, it is very important to bring the community on the same page for conservation. So today, I often get questions sometimes when I go outside. People often ask me, "What will you do by protecting the forest?" जंगल जंगल पाल के तुम क्या करेगा? आप जानवर ही पालेगा ना, आदमी तो नहीं पाल सकता ना. So this something has really got me. So I believe that only when people are convinced that conserving certain species or conserving certain forest is beneficial for us, and beneficial in the sense what, not just for oxygen, water, and all this purpose, not just the ecological benefits but also the economic benefits, only then the people will come forward and give their hand in conserving the wildlife. So we have taken up certain initiatives such as promoting ecotourism. So if you see, we have some local boys who are now trained in hospitality, giving homestays or making good food for the tourists who come. Then there are few boys who are trained as amazing birders who can identify the calls of any number of birds in the national park. So these people are now coming forward and taking up the cause of conservation. So this is the actual, I can say, the success story of conservation, if we can say. Next, we participation can be of different types. Now, we have also involved a local voice in human-elephant conflict management. So this gives a sense of belongingness towards the forest. So it curtails the kind of animosity between the forest wildlife and the humans, and it brings them close and gives them the idea of coexistence. We also have tried to involve the corporates in the cause of conservation, because all of us have something to give back to the environment, because we take a lot from the environment. And the most important, what we feel, is training the younger generation. So education and awareness is a very important thing. Once we know the importance of something, I'll come forward to save it. But until and unless I don't know what amazing things I have and why it is important for my survival and the survival of my next generations, I would not bother to save it. So these are the awareness generation programs that we have done, like celebration of Elephant Day or celebration of Rainforest Day, where we actually took the school children, college students inside the forest, gave them a feel of trekking inside the forest, showed them different birds, animals. So this is how you develop a sense of belongingness and a sense of oneness towards nature. Once this respect develops, once this sensitivity develops, it is the next generation who will themselves come forward and say, no, we have to save this species. And this, I have specially mentioned about this small stone art made by one of the Digboy College students, Niranjan Naik. So these are the different expressions that people are now taking up to take up the cause of conservation. This is another very interesting program by the Assam State Zoo. It is a conservation breeding program. So a pair of white-winged wood ducks are now brought into the zoo from ZEC, and they are being kept in a very good facility here, isolated facility where quarantine norms are followed, and this will be the pioneering species for the future conservation breeding of this species. Currently, they are not put up for display in the zoo, because the main aim for bringing the pair is for conservation breeding and propagation of their population. So these are a few of the photos provided by the Assam State Zoo. So these, what all we saw in the previous slides, were basically in situ conservation measures, and these are ex situ conservation measures. So now the ducks are enjoying in their new home, happily swimming in the new pool that they have got. The other ancillary activities that we are carrying out is like skill upgradation, motivation of the forest staff, because it is very difficult against all the challenges and the pressures that are existing today from all sides, for land, from the people, for encroachment. In all this, keeping the motivation of the staff high, with the less number of staff that we operate, having a very good hold on the forest, we really need to take up technology. We really need to upgrade or upskill our staff. And I believe our staff are that very passionate and motivated that even in their 50s or late 50s, I can say they were very enthusiastic about taking these new technologies, such as drones that I have put up in the photograph. So this is another thing that we are giving for the conservation. And now, if I come to the last point, the duck is asking. Now, this picture is taken by Mr. Palash Muzumdar. He is one of the photographers who had come to Dihing Patkai National Park. And the bird, as if it is asking us, have you secured my flight into the future? So, okay, fine, you are doing so many conservation efforts, but what next? What more? So, as sir has also suggested, that we need a very specific and a very updated research in this population estimation and monitoring of the species, because there have not been very big camera trapping or such incidences of the bird to know more into the secret life of the white-winged wood duck. Then restoration and protection of potential habitats. We have already lost a lot of rainforests that are there around, in and around Dumduma and Digboy. So we can probably start by restoring these forests. Next is awareness generation. We have a huge fan following for the celebrity wildlife like tiger, elephant. But now it is time that we start heroing these small, very shy and introvert kind of wildlife also. Probably we can take up initiatives like awareness weeks, white-winged wood duck day, or finding a place in a web series like today's. Next is sensitization of locals and alternate livelihood opportunities. We need to make sure that the locals entering into these habitats of the white-winged wood duck should reduce. And even if it does, they should be sensitive about it, that we should not disturb the bird. And whatever activities we are carrying out should be at a safe distance. Next is focus species recovery program. So we have to focus on the niche and very particular needs of this bird. Only then, because as sir has also mentioned previously, that the general conservation idea, of course, we have to have a very bird eye view of saving the whole habitat, but within the habitat, micromanagement for this particular species is also required. And I think, yes, all these things are very important, but the basic philosophy of conservation is to go from ego to eco. We need to understand that just because these birds cannot talk, just because these birds are not able to have a very visible impact in our lives today, doesn't mean they do not have the right to share this world with us. So the first thing is we have to go from a kind of domination to sharing, or what we have written, a philosophy of coexistence, a philosophy of mutual respect, and which goes from a ego that I am the superior species to eco that I have all these species are with me to share this planet today. So I go to the last point of my slide. So the wood duck is all set, and it's saying that I have done my bit to save our environment by providing us very good wetlands. So are you doing it? So it is asking us a question before we leave this platform today. With this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you, ma'am, for this informative session. As a manager of forest, you have done a lot in conserving the spaces. Now we have some questions from our viewers. Sir, Choudhury sir.
Yes.
Sir, there is a question for you. What is the species of trees that is preferred mostly? It's asked by Mukut Chandra Das.
For nesting or roosting?
For nesting, actually, it's not mentioned clearly. He's just asking what is the species of trees that is preferred mostly.
Actually, no such data available. Because whatever trees we
Yeah.
have found, they prefer the broken top for nesting. Generally, we used to believe that they, fly into like, the holes used by owls or, other birds like hornbills. It's not like that. They also use that because in Sumatra and elsewhere it has been found that they use, holes, flying into the holes. But more comfortable is flying into the, broken top, whatever may be the species. Roosting, we have noticed, several times on holong trees and also some ficus, big ficus. In Dumduma, the major roosting tree was a ficus tree that has unfortunately been devastated by lightning. That was the most, assured site in Dumduma. Elsewhere in Dumduma, I have seen them in holong trees, roosting, not nesting.
Hope they got the answer. Ma'am, one question for you. Does this duck have any commercial value? Is it being poached?
I will mention it provided they don't take ideas from whatever answer I give. Yes, basically, commercial value as in not a very trade value or something like not anything similar to pangolin scales or no smuggling value as such. But of course, they are poached for any other duck, like for meat, for hatchlings, for keeping as pet, for inbreeding, like breeding with the domestic ducks. These are the basic local threats, not any commercial big international racket kind of thing.
Aru নাই নেকি question?
আছে sir.
মই মানে
How
question শেষ হলে মই the other Kasturi কাৰণে মোৰ এটা suggestion আছে. Very good presentation, very good.
Sir,
I have a
thank you.
suggestion I will tell you later on after the questions are over.
Yeah, one more question is how do you see the status awareness campaign and community participation for the conservation of the white-winged wood duck? Any specific model you suggest out of your long experience, sir?
Now you see, when I was posted in Tinsukia, মই ক'ৰবাত গ'লে ধৰি লওক গাঁৱৰ মানুহ লগ পাইছোঁ, ক'ৰবাত শুনিছোঁ যে এটা দেওহাঁহ মানুহৰ ডমেষ্টিক হাঁহৰ লগত দেখিছে। And when I visited, the owner said that, he found it as a duckling and then, brought it to his home. আৰু হাঁহৰ পোৱালিবিলাকৰ লগত ডাঙৰ হৈ গ'ল। আচ্ছা, ডাঙৰ হোৱাৰ পিছত তেতিয়া মই তাতে বহিলোঁ, মানুহজনে খুব গুৰুত্ব দিলে। মই শুনিয়ে তিনিচুকীয়াৰ পৰা গ'লোঁ যে হাঁহটোৰ ইমান গুৰুত্ব। তেওঁ বুজাই দিলোঁ এইটো আপুৰুগীয়া বস্তু, এইটো সংৰক্ষণ কৰিব লাগে। আপুনি চাব যাতে এইটো কোনোবা হাৰ্ম নকৰে। সেইটো এটা এৱেৰনেছ হৈ গ'ল। চাওক, এৱেৰনেছ ক'লে যে আমি এখন মিটিং অৰ্গেনাইজ কৰিব লাগিব, ইজ নট নেচেচাৰী। মই যেতিয়া গ'লোঁ তাত, মইতো প্ৰজেক্ট ডাইৰেক্টৰ DRD আছিলোঁ তিনিচুকীয়াত 91-2। তেতিয়া অলৰেডি লট অফ ভিলেজাৰ্ছ কেম, পিটি চাব আহিছে কিবা কিবি কামৰ কাৰণে। সকলোৱে কথাখিনি শুনিলে। তাৰপিছত মই ফ'ল' আপ কৰিছোঁ। এদিন গম পালোঁ যে হাঁহটো অলপ ডাঙৰ হোৱাৰ পিছত বনৰীয়া হাঁহ যেতিয়া ওপৰেদি উৰি গৈ আছে, এইটো সিহঁতক ইট জইন ডেট গ্ৰুপ আৰু একেলগে ইট ভেনিছড। সেই এৱেৰনেছটোৰ কাৰণে হাঁহটোক একো হাৰ্ম কৰা নহ'ল। নহ'লে কোনোবা কৰিলে বনৰীয়া হাঁহ আমি খাই দিওঁ, বহু ধৰণৰ আইডিয়া আহিলে হয়। লগত সেই মানুহখিনি এৱেৰ হ'ল। তাৰপৰা ওচৰে পাঁজৰে স্কুলত কিবা প্ৰগ্ৰাম থাকিলে মই গৈছোঁ। আমি কেতিয়াবা ভাবোঁ যে এৱেৰনেছ কৰিবলৈ হ'লে ডাঙৰ প্ৰজেক্ট লাগিব, উই নিড বিগ প্ৰজেক্টছ আৰু মিটিং অৰ্গেনাইজ কৰিব লাগিব। সেইটো অলৱেজ নট নেচেচাৰী। আৰু আজিকালিতো বহুত মিটিং হয়, ডিপাৰ্টমেণ্টে মিটিং কল কৰে, স্কুলত এৱেৰনেছ কৰা হয়। সেইবিলাকত গৈ সুযোগ ল'ব লাগে। আৰু যাৰ যিমান আইডিয়া আছে, আইডিয়াবিলাক মানুহক বুজাই ক'ব লাগে। হাঁহৰ পৰা মাংসনো কিমান ওলায়। আজিকালি ব্ৰইলাৰ চিকেন আছে, ডমেষ্টিক হাঁহ আছে, বজাৰত কিনিবলৈ পায়। আৰু এইটো লছ হ'লে যে কিমান ডাঙৰ লছ। গোটেই পৃথিৱীতে তাৰ পপুলেশ্যনটো কেইবাশ মাত্ৰ। সেইটোৱে এৱাৰনেছ আৰু তাৰ কাৰণে বেলেগ কোনো মডেল বা হেৰি নালাগে। সজাগতা আৰু গুৰুত্বটো ক'ব লাগে।
Sir, in your opinion, are the critical micro-habitat interventions required for white-winged wood duck? Can it survive outside protected area?
No, it will survive, provided the habitat, get some sort of protection. এটা ধৰি লওক ডুমডুমা ডাঙৰ ৰিজৰ্ট ৱৰ্ল্ড ৰেকৰ্ড ব্ৰেকিং গ্ৰুপ পোৱা গৈছিল। তাত এতিয়া সেইটো পপুলেশ্যন নাই, কিন্তু হ'লেও আছে, বিকজ হেবিটেট ইজ দেয়াৰ। মই 2020 যেতিয়া ভিজিট কৰিছোঁ, 2020 ডুমডুমা এজ ৱেল এজ ডাঙৰি। ডুমডুমাত দুদিনতে মই বহুত ডেজ আই চাইটেড ডাক্স। ডাঙৰিত মই কল শুনিছোঁ, কাৰণ তাৰ হেবিটেট ইজ দেয়াৰ, সেইকাৰণে হাঁহটো বাচি আছে আৰু মাইক্ৰ' হেবিটেটৰ অলপ ইণ্টাৰভেনশ্যন লাগিব। দ্য মষ্ট পপুলাৰ চাইটছ য'ত মানে আমাৰ কস্তুৰী চুলে য'ত ফটো দেখাইছে পিকচাৰ্ছ, those photos are taken just outside the park, and those two wetlands are artificially created. One was created during the preparation of an oil field, the rig, setting up of the rig. They cut the topsoil and they threw all the soil in one side, and in the process it blocked a rivulet. Then a water body has been formed. Then in another site, those both were actually initially found by me in 90s, and now much later the tourists are visiting. And Bombudam বুলি কয়, that oil মানে magazine এটা আছে। Magazineৰ ওচৰত magazine to connect the magazine with a all weather road. They have put a band on a small rivulet, and that band has become a lake now. And these two are the areas where most of the photography are taking place now. So South micro intervention দৰকাৰ আছে। এতিয়া আমি যদি ধৰি লওক চৰাই পুং ৰেঞ্জ অফিচৰ অলপ উইদিন 1 কিলোমিটাৰ 2 কিলোমিটাৰ আমি যদি দুইটা পণ্ড টাইপ বনাই দিওঁ, not just tank, we should look like natural habitat, maybe small 1 hectare 2 hectares. Such interventions can be made so that ducks remain mostly within the PA. And one suggestion to Sule, the presentation was very good. And those wetlands you have shown, ducks from those wetlands, those you just start mapping how these wetlands can be, included within the park. You see, take the map of the park and locate the wetlands and try to connect those. This will be addition to the park. Then another area very important is, of course, on the other side of the road, Digboi Dumduma Road, Digboi Duliajan Road. On the north side, you will see the rainforest is rightly on the flat plains, entirely flat, no undulation. In this flat plain inside, there are a lot of pools, and these are haunted by these ducks. In my original proposal of 96, those were there. But somehow, so you also try to, at least make an effort. So that if that gets into the
Definitely,
park,
sir.
it will be really
Thank
good.
you. Thank you for your suggestion, sir. I'll just make a note of it, definitely.
Because you are posted in such in the actual site.
Yes,
It
yes,
is an
definitely.
opportunity you must take.
It is a very privileged opportunity, sir.
Yeah. Fuck. Aru question আছে নেকি?
Ma'am, you have already mentioned about community involvement in your slides. What do you think is needed to build capacity of forest frontline, and how are they being involved in the protection activity?
Uh, First, the basic work of forest frontline staff itself is mainly protection, monitoring, and keeping an eye on the wildlife whenever they are posted in forest areas. Not just that, even outside forest areas where human wildlife conflict is involved. So their basic um, duty itself is protection. However, today what more is required is to upskill them by giving them different technologies at hand, such as I showed in one of our slides that we have recently imparted a training at the forest school for them. It was a kind of a refresher training where they were given information on different mobile applications like how to make KML, how to track their own patrolling paths, how to use the drone. So such interventions will not only make them motivated that yes, I'm learning something new, now I can do something more. So that also breaks their monotony, it also motivates them, and it gives them a more clearer picture of the perspective of the duty that they are doing. So it doesn't remain that okay, you go to this place, take a picture of this bird and come back. This remains the a mechanical duty. But when they know that they are involved in a very conservation of a very important species, they also contribute more wholeheartedly for it. So motivation, upskilling, and building up their morale, all these things are important from the frontline staff point of view.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, last question for you, sir. Has time come to initiate a conservation breeding program for Devha? It has bred well in captivity in some foreign zoos, or habitat conservation measures should suffice at this moment.
Number one, so you see, particularly for Assam, habitat
In
conservation is fine. But the conservation breeding, of course, it was kept like that only, not necessarily for conservation breeding. But captive, in captivity, there are a number of ducks in Dumduma Tea Garden. And sorry, in Borduma Tea Garden near Dumduma. In 80s, 90s, many ducks were kept there. Even wild ducks used to visit and they used to, go inside and they got trapped. But unfortunately, numbers grew as usual. But unfortunately, it has been found that the ducks are dying because of avian TB, tuberculosis. Because those, enclosures are built of, tin and iron nets. And birds got, infested from TB from these rusted nets. Then they started one in another tea garden. I think Namdang Tea Garden near Margarita. There also they started. So in 90s, I visited both. And in 80s, I found ducks in many ducks, 20, 30 in Bordovi. But in 90s, I didn't find any in Bordovi because all had died. But I found some ducks in Namdang. So I told the manager, but they were doing with some permission taken by Assam Valley Wildlife Society, which is defunct now. I told them to stop that because we have wild population and let us, think of the preservation of the habitat. And if you want to, think of some conservation breeding or captive breeding, at that time it was called captive breeding, then it will have to be purely scientific so that there is no avian TB or other such disease. But that has also been stopped. But in the process, a lot of ducks were lost. So for Assam, we need to improve habitat. and also secure the habitat. And to stop, duckling and egg collection, we need some community participation. So when I was PD DRDF in Sukia, I helped a chap in a village between Digboy and Dunduma. Sorry, between Digboy and Duliajan. I think Borjan Forest Village or something like that. He had malaria, so I treated him for his malaria. Then I provided him with an IOI house. Then he used to give me information. Then I used to meet all those people and try to motivate them. And that was really helpful. So you need to have some people for community, not just community participation outright, because community participation is required for overall preservation. But you need some people who can give you information about duckling and egg collection. And once that informations are ready, you can even nab or apprehend a few people so that the message will go that no, this is illegal. Whatever we are doing is not legal. That way, because the brood size is quite big, even 10, 12, something like that, white-winged duck. And if they succeed, raising a good percentage of that, then the population will come up.
ধন্যবাদ স্যার।
Okay, thank you.
স্যাৰ আৰু মেম, আপোনালোকক ধন্যবাদ জনাইছোঁ ফৰ শ্বেয়াৰিং ইউৰ নলেজ উইথ আছ। দুইটা বক্তৃতাই তথ্য সমৃদ্ধ আৰু আকৰ্ষণীয় আছিল। আশা কৰোঁ আমাৰ বন বিভাগৰ সকলো কৰ্মচাৰীৰ লগতে ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰী, গৱেষক আৰু স্থানীয় লোকৰ বাবে এই লেচাৰ নন স্পেচিছ, যিটো কম পৰিচিত প্ৰজাতিটো ভালদৰে জনাত সহায় কৰিব আৰু ইয়াৰ সুৰক্ষাৰ প্ৰসাৰত প্ৰভাৱশালী হ'ব। মই ধন্যবাদ জনাইছোঁ আমাৰ মাননীয় প্ৰধান মুখ্য বন সংৰক্ষক আৰু বন বিভাগৰ মুৰব্বী শ্ৰী MK যাদৱ ছাৰক, আমাৰ ৰিচাৰ্চ উইঙৰ মুখ্য বন সংৰক্ষক ডক্টৰ সোণালী ঘোষ মেমক এই ৱেবিনাৰ লানি অনুষ্ঠিত কৰাত আমাক সহায় কৰাৰ কাৰণে আৰু বিশেষ উৎসাহ দিয়াৰ বাবে। মই ধন্যবাদ জনাইছোঁ ডাইৰেক্টৰ আছাম ফৰেষ্ট স্কুল মিষ্টাৰ সুহাস কদম ছাৰক আৰু তেওঁৰ দলটোক সকলো কাৰিকৰী সহায় সহযোগিতাৰ বাবে, আৰু সকলো কাৰিকৰী দিশত সহায় কৰাৰ কাৰণে টিম WWFৰ গুৱাহাটী অফিচক মই বিশেষ ধন্যবাদ জনাইছোঁ। চ' ডু টিউন ইন টুমৰো চেম টাইম আৰু এটা আকৰ্ষণীয় ৱেবিনাৰ আৰু এটা বেলেগ প্ৰজাতিৰ ওপৰত। ধন্যবাদ, শুভৰাত্ৰি।
Wait, before we call it a day, I have one thing to answer.
Yes, ma'am.
We had a call to identify.
Yeah.
So before we call it a day, I'll just put up the call of the white-winged wood duck.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So if you go into the forest and if you listen to this sound, the first thing that happens to is you get scared. And which is this call of the duck, from which it has derived its name, the Devha, which is like the spirited duck or the God spirited duck. So that is why I particularly gave the call, which is very unlikely of any other duck or goose for that matter. So with this, I think on this note, we can end the session today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all. Good night.